Hi, welcome to episode 74 of the American Tributaries podcast, where to break out of the bubbles we've all been living in, we're using modern technology to explore the various currents of people in our great country, kind of like a 21st century Lewis and Clark journey. I'm your host, Michael Whitten, here in Brooklyn, New York, and thank you for joining me in this exploration of America. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Tami Van, who lives about 5 miles to the north of me in Manhattan. Tami, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you doing, and could you share a bit of your story?
Sure. Thank you for having us. For having me. I'll just give a little background. So I've been in construction for the last 20 plus years or so. And I've been living in New York all my life. So it's the economy of the changes of New York City through 40 plus years of growing up here and kind of seeing through all the different changes, especially recently post pandemic and whatnot. It's been interesting. So I think I just want to give a little bit insight to how that has affected me personally and also the construction industry as well.
Yeah. Well, like how did you get into the construction industry?
So it's kind of odd about way. I graduated in early 2000s, and at that time I was actually majoring in computer technology and information systems. And what was happening abroad was that everything was being outsourced to India and other countries. So everything in America was not paying well, or was not actually hiring at all. So my sister at the time was working for a real estate management company, Hines Management. So she said a subcontract of hers is looking for an assistant. So I said, I'm willing to do anything. I just wanted a job. So I actually broke into the construction industry as executive assistant for metal, stone, and wood maintenance. And it's very, very interesting because it's a union company too. And that's how I got my foothold into how the union world works in New York City. And it is something as crazy, actually. The union is it's another world, another way of thinking, and it's so different from I've been to I think at least 7 different unions, and every different unions has its own sort of like niche, but for the most part it's kind of like the same mentality of sorts. The back of the presence of the union was meant to benefit the people, and at this stage it's just to enrich themselves. So that's the kind of situation that we're in. So whenever I mention that, oh, I'm an open shop, I'm no longer a union company, oh, they're like, oh, thank God. It's like
Oh yeah.
you don't want to deal with a union company. It's just so much bureaucracy, so much extra costs. Like the cost for a union guy is about 3 times as much, and the labor productivity is maybe 1/10. So that's what the connotation now is. So union is now like a derogatory term. So for the construction industry at least.
Really?
That's how it's gotten bad. Really, really bad. And I think COVID actually broke a lot of that issue of like converting buildings into, because it's not actually just union itself, it's buildings that are union. New York City is very, very strange, where the building has to have union employees, and everyone in the building has to be a different part of a union, but has to be a union worker to work in it. So you get a strange pool of people coming in.
Hmm.
Now it's broken that because of labor issues and whatnot.
Now, so your first job was working for a union or working for like a shop
Union
that
company.
worked with unions?
It's working with a union company. So we were part of a union. We were
Hmm.
part of the labor force for the metal workers and metal wood workers and whatnot.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And then and graduated over to electrical union. And
Hmm.
electrical union is extremely strong in New York City. It's
Right.
IBEW, Local 3.
Hmm.
And it actually says a lot. If you're in the construction industry, you hear Local 3, you're kind of a little petrified, because they're so strong that they require everyone to be Local 3. If you're a Local 3 company, that means your receptionist Local 3, your admin, your officers,
Hmm.
except for the owner, they can be exempt, and one person, everyone in the company is a Local 3 employee. So that's how they keep their union force really united, because why would you want to lose your benefits? So
Right. Well, but in this day and age, I guess there seems to be, at least you do hear some people. There's, I guess, an alternative when people talk unions saying that we need a stronger like representation for labor.
See, that's the thing. Is like it becomes so different to understand how when you get the union representation, it's not because of how corrupt they are and how powerful they become. They don't represent the people anymore. They represent themselves. So they you keep on paying these dues, which the workers don't actually see. So, for example, local three, someone making $60 an hour, you have to pay about $60, $62 an hour in union benefits. So it's 126 plus insurance, plus a bunch of other things that's in it. But they don't see all that dollars. It's in the union. So they'll have there's legal fees and pensions that are, yes, part of it, but a lot of it is not. They don't see it at all. So you're just paying the union to become wealthier and wealthier, and they control more people. And what ends up happening is that if you want to hire a bad egg, which always happens, of course, you can't fire them. It's like you have to fire a certain percentage of your workforce. And what ends up happening is that when you want to rehire, you have to call the hall and ask them, "Could I rehire could I rehire people? Can I get people?" And they're like, "Okay, we'll throw back the rotten egg at you because you're stuck with it because no one wants them." So they
Hmm.
end up hiring people and hiring the same crap people, and the industry just gets worse and worse because they're stuck with all these like bad eggs, and there's nowhere until they retire. It's gets on keep on getting recycled into different companies.
Hmm.
So productivity actually, you lose productivity. If it would be a good and strong union if it represented the employers and the employees, where
Hmm.
if we have complaints, if there are issues with like the workers' productivity and whatnot, we should be able to get rid of them. They should be actually be forced to leave the union, but it doesn't. It never happens.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. Sounds interesting. I guess I've been from what I've when I was a lawyer, you'd get insights into the corporate world, and sometimes I wonder how much bloat there is in the corporate world as well. Maybe not like in the construction world, but I it's it was interesting. Like I think what I one of the things that I find interesting is even if you watch like if I guess when people try to think about unions, they might think about like I think about like the baseball union,
Mm-hmm.
and the way it's kind of presented is baseball players make so much money, but then you look at how much the owners make, and then they're like, well, yes, somebody signed for $40 million, but the owners are making $1 billion. And then you'll look at what baseball players used to get made before they had a strong union, and you see how big it's been. I think many people would say like baseball players get paid way too much for what their value is for society, really. But
Exactly.
their union was very strong in kind of saying, hey, if you're going to make money, we want a cut of the action as well. um, which I guess there's inefficiencies, and I to me it's like I feel like really almost every human endeavor has its inefficiencies.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
I mean, I guess it'd be good to hear. It would be good if all organizations would be more sensitive to the bloat and bureaucracy and inefficiencies, so that they could be maybe more true to what they were intended to be.
Yeah, I mean, unlike basketball where you can get injured and still get paid, I think of baseball and other sports and whatnot. You get paid a decent amount because your lifespan as an athlete is not that long. So you need to kind of amass as much as you can at the time.
Hmm.
So, and you're sharing, of course, with the pool. They're making a ton of money, a shit ton of money, and it's just for entertainment. It's not
Yeah.
really you're not enriching anything except for entertaining people. But a lot of things are like that. Entertainment gets a lot more clout here than anywhere else. You go to like Korea, you go to like Vietnam, where I'm originally from. It's like
Hmm.
the best soccer player that made it to FIFA and whatnot is selling hot dogs down the street. They don't make much money at all. They're poor unless they get endorsements. These days, endorsements are it's what paying. It's
Right.
what's keeping them like afloat. But they shouldn't be because it's not a necessity. So
Mm.
it is. It's a perk to be entertained and to be amused and whatnot, but it's not a necessity. And it's not. But a lot of things are because we become a more enriched society, meaning like we have a lot more free time. So we need to keep ourselves busy
Hmm.
and entertain. So then we create all these, BS stuff to like throw money at. Like I was just telling you before, if I wasn't doing this interview with you, I've been watching K drama because it's quite popular these days. So it's just that situation is like we can throw money at. You can only eat so much before you become extremely obese. You can only do so much things, so you end up throwing your money at your favorite artist, your favorite athlete, your favorite whatever it is, and try to like keep yourself alive and entertained for the next however long you live. In the
Yeah.
US is about 75 years. Hopefully it's a good 75 years though. But the thing is that with medical these days, who knows?
Yeah.
It costs exactly.
So, so how did you end up from Vietnam originally, and then here in New York? Like, what was what's your life story to go from Vietnam to here?
So I was born in New York, but
Oh,
on the way, my mom and dad had five other girls. So there
uh,
were four other before me, and they were born in Vietnam. And they immigrated. They did the whole refugee camp for about 2 years before they actually were sponsored by Catholics. I gotta say, thank God for the Catholics sometimes. Like it
yeah.
did help. It was great. I'm not religious at all,
Mm-hmm.
but they did help a lot of the Vietnamese community um, getting out of the war torn era and the communist regime.
Mm-hmm.
So then my parents decided to move to New York because they had a choice apparently. I don't really know too much about it, but they said it was like a choice of like California, New York, or Minnesota or something odd like that. And I'm glad they chose New York because Minnesota, I don't know, I would probably shoot myself if I growing up. I don't know. It's like maybe it's just so boring. Um, California, maybe. But then I'm like, thank God, because I have cousins in Cali. I'm like, thank God it's New York, because half of them are, actually more of them are like something. They're Californian, just to say that. That's a little different. So we all end up, so they picked New York, and then I actually grew up in Brooklyn for the first 20 years, and then
Oh,
I moved to Manhattan. So it's been half and half, 20 years in Brooklyn, 20 years in Manhattan for the most
okay.
part.
So you're really like a New York City girl through and through.
Yeah, pretty much. Like that's the way it's funny because that's the way I also kind of I'm speaking a little too fast. It's just I haven't had coffee because I don't drink coffee, but that's just how I am. So I realize it's not a coffee thing. It's not a caffeine thing. It's just a New York
That's
thing.
great. I could do lots of caffeine. I still wouldn't be as energetic as you are right now. So I'm impressed.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like a mile a minute. So everyone's
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? Sometimes it helps 'cause when I'm bargaining and they're like, what did you just say? And they just get so tired. I'm like, okay, you can have it at whatever you want.
Well, one of the when I was in the Navy, and the closest I can understand like your job is like as an officer, I was you're responsible for managing like projects and repairs, and they were more kind of like isolated, and like you'd get into a shipyard and they were like professionals who kind of handled like the more major overhauls, but you still had to manage them, and
Yeah.
I found it so daunting that just to be able to kind of like get push projects to get done, because you know there's so many things that need to be done, and sometimes people are just like bullshitting you, sometimes there's
Oh
really
yeah.
a problem, and kind of having any sense as to what was a real problem versus what was just BS was, to me, I really frankly like almost like unmanageable. Like I couldn't do it that well. So how have you been able to, I mean, I don't know if that's what your job is like, but if it
Yeah.
is, how do you manage that?
You pretty much capsulated everything that it's my job. So what I've done and I've done in the past is that I've actually just pretty much went out there and did what somebody said that they said they couldn't do, or they said that this was impossible, or this is how long it took them to do. So in I went to I started as executive assistant, but then I realized like okay, in order to manage everything that the owner wanted, I had to know a little bit of everything. So I knew, I started doing the accounting, I started doing the operations, but physically doing it. So because I got a little annoyed with like, oh no, this is going to take this long. And I'm like, let me go out there and see how long it takes. And let me see how long this is going to take, and how, because it helps with when you have an IT background to kind of organize yourself and also kind of um, do everything sort of in a automated way. So everything that I could automate, I automated, and everything that has to require that required physical labor, you have to just go out and do it yourself. So I actually do know, like, because I worked in electrical for 10 years, I actually know how to do like general wiring, low voltage wiring, things like that. I actually do, like, I fix all the lights and I change all the I retrofit all the lights and stuff like that in my apartment. I'm also a
Wow.
landlord, so I actually go out and, like, I YouTube a lot of stuff, but I'm too cheap. So I go out and I fix the washer and dryer and the stove and all that stuff. And I actually, I do the plumbing. It's like low plumbing, just regular, just like under the sink, some shower stuff, some HV. I also done the HVAC stuff too, rewired thermostats and stuff like that. Because I actually, again, if you don't know how to do it, they can bullshit you. So I actually know
Right.
how to do it. I actually know how to estimate. I know how to. So I actually, from the low level to doing like just admin paperwork to the high level of actually installing work, and pricing it out and then selling it. I've done that. So I've done all aspects of my job pretty well, because literally I fired people and said I'm just going to take over because I can't stand dealing with just gross incompetence. It's like it's something robbing you, and for me, working for a company, I feel like it's my money too, because if they do poorly, I'm going to do poorly. So I'm going to be out of a job if I don't get the job done well. So at the end of the day, I feel like it's my company as well. So then that's why I put a lot of effort into learning everyone's job and also being more sympathetic to certain people, because it's hard, especially HVAC, especially when we do new construction. There's no AC because we're installing it. So during the summer, it's like 110 degrees inside because there's no AC and it's enclosed environment. You're dealing with a lot of crap. You're dealing with just the language is an issue because you have such blatant racism sometimes. A lot of our workers are Spanish speaking workers, but they only speak Spanish. But then you have the managers who only speak English, and you're communicating sometimes with them. They're horrible. And I actually am new because I grew up in an immigrant family. So I'm like, right now we have technology. Just Google Translate things. They're very
Yeah.
they're very savvy. So I'm like, we're very happy to hire people who are competent. But if the language is an issue, that's actually a minor thing these days when you can show people how to do things and they can work with their hands. So
Hmm.
that's what I'm happy to see with like the field. But it's right now what I'm seeing is a glut of shit managers who are just like, especially the new labor force, where you get people who graduate and have no clue what they're doing, have no understanding. They don't want to get their hands dirty. They want to do like barely a 9 to 5. It's like, this is construction. You have to sometimes go over it, go over and beyond. The hours are not going to actually jive with what you want, because hey, if things break down, you have to be there. But that's the problem. Like, I literally probably have like a 2,000% of like of a hire and fire rate in the company. Its turnover is so
Really?
high. It's like every company's like that. Turnover is so freaking high, and then you get people you try to recruit from other companies, and then you realize, oh, they've been burnt, or they what they did in the other company was bullshit. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, because our company is more like a smallish company.
Mm-hmm.
We have about like 100 field workers and whatnot, and so you see right away what they can accomplish versus other company. If they worked for a larger company, they can hide it. For me, I can see it because I've done it personally. That I'm like, no, you're fucking full of shit. This is not something how it's done, and you don't. They'll like tell you some bullshit answer about how they should be installing this way. And I'm like, dude, it's standard. This is not how it's done. Don't bullshit. You either did it or you didn't do it. It's very easy. It's literally physically you see it. You can't hide that. So it's that's why my industry is a little bit easier to actually kind of temper out the crap immediately, especially if you're open shop. When we had the issue of a union, we had to go through this whole rigmarole of like documenting stuff, why they were bad, why there were safety issues, why if they were sexually harassing other workers and whatnot. It took a while because they had a labor rep. The labor rep had to go through some sort of like internal like discussion and review and whatnot. It took months, so they could be on the job for months. And again, at 120 to $150 an hour per person, you're blowing through so much money for this. It's a six-figure salary for one union, one mechanic, that for a small company can like make or break you. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what ends up happening. They have all these shit mechanics that just cruise. They just cruise all day long, and they're like, where the worst thing is that I can understand if you want to cruise a little bit and you're a little bit productive, but they cruise and they'll pretend to get hurt. Like, oh, I jammed my toe and now I can't work and now I have a workers' comp claim and now my workers' comp goes up. So that's the worst thing. It's like you get so many of these riffraff that's like, okay, I see the writing on the wall. I'm just gonna pretend and trip. It's like that's the
Hmm.
stupidest thing I hate. And I see that so much too as well. So
Well, so, and your position is what is your current position?
I'm the CFO of the company.
You're the
So
CFO.
I
So,
handle finances and operations of sorts.
uh, well, it sounds like your mindset has to be. I don't know if I'd say super aggressive, but it does sound like you kind of have to manage the people and the equipment and the projects with very kind of aggressively.
Yeah, I do. It's to the it's unfortunately it's to the micro level because I also handle all the purchasing and whatnot. So I have to make sure because we've had people, and this is typical in the industry. If you hire a purchasing manager or you hire an estimator, you have to be careful because they make deals. They make backhanded deals with the
Uh,
vendors to get exclusives. Like, oh, if you give me 50 grand, I'll award you this $1 million like equipment and stuff like that.
mhm.
That's where you have to kind of make sure that you're buying from the right vendor and you're not, they're not on the take. Our like
Right.
people on the take. It happens so often, and it's a little bit. This is why our budgets get bloated because all this stupid little thing that happens. Where they're like making deals and this and that. I was like, oh, you did me a favor this time. I'm like, just give me the best price.
Mhm.
I don't really, it's stop with the nonsense. It's like, oh, if you provide it, it's like literally what can you do differently? No, it's just a brand thing. So we're
Mhm.
buying HVAC equipment to meet specifications. So as long as it's approved, I don't really care which brand it is, as long as they don't care either. So I'm going to give you the cheapest possible that provides the specification that's requested. And it's super easy, super straightforward. But there's so many stupid games that gets played on trying to like package together an equipment or do a buyout on like subcontracting out installation or this and that because somebody gets involved and they want their friend involved here and there, or they created this company with this other buddy. So it gets a little messy sometimes. Luckily, we don't have that too much because I get involved in most of the buying, but it does happen occasionally when I see a little like sort of favoritism where I'm like, why is this PM really pushing for me to award this to this specific vendor when I know in history they suck.
Mhm.
And they suck because they fail to communicate sometimes or they provide really bad submittals or whatnot. So a little bit of games. Every industry is like that. You have like someone that's gonna make a little extra on top of everything to kind of enrich themselves while they're like on the job itself. But luckily, we don't have that too much in our company. But I see that a lot when I was working at different companies. Um,
Mhm.
the only
Did
problem,
Oh, go on.
the only problem is that small industry, and after a while, your name gets associated as being you like being a pig. So if you're a purchasing agent or your estimator and your name gets out and you're like, oh, that guy's a pig. So that's how I actually helped. I would sometimes call out the vendors and like, hey, is this guy he's interviewing at my company? Do you know him? Like, oh, I know him. Yes. And I said, tell me, is he a pig or not? Because the competency is there, and they're like, yeah, he's always shaking me down for shit.
Oh,
So the vendor sometimes will call them out for us. So because
uh-huh.
they don't want to deal with someone they have to constantly, wine and dine. I don't like. I'm
Right.
not really that social, so I'm like, don't fucking take me out. I don't want to eat with you. Give me my
Right.
goddamn equipment. Like I don't want to eat with you. I don't need to talk to you. I don't need to see you. Just I'll send you an email and that's it. So it's
Right.
very simple.
Do you think that this job taps into I guess like an innate aggressiveness for you, or did you have to become a bit more aggressive
I think
in
it's
this?
well, to be perfectly honest, it kind of aligned with my personality and my family's personality. Because overall, we're very aggressive. I think maybe it
Mhm.
could be a Vietnamese thing too. We're super aggressive. That's like the whole country. Tiny people,
Uh-huh.
very aggressive, super aggressive. But it also makes you a lot more aggressive and kind of, I would say a lot of people say I just maybe a little heartless because, there's no crying in construction. There's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in construction.
Uh-huh.
We don't have time to just like kind of coddle and that's the thing. A lot of the new, and like I said, a lot of the new labor force is like they want this time off. They want to be coddled. They want like, oh, you didn't train me enough. And I'm like, pick the shit up, Google it. These are the days of technology. You can, if you didn't pick it up in the field and you didn't pick it up, it was by asking somebody, look the shit up on Google. What the hell's wrong with you? YouTube it, and I get really annoyed when I'm like, you're young. You're supposed to have technology working with you, and it's like against you because you can't even figure it out. So you're doubly incompetent. So that's
Hmm.
where it's really really freaking annoying. Yes, for sure, it makes you super aggressive, but it also makes you like super aware of the competencies of people. You're like I like even everything I do in personal relationships. I'm like, why the hell did this? It comes up. It helps, because I'm the same way when it comes to my personal relationships with like family or my significant other. So I treat them sometimes the same. Unfortunately, it's like
Hmm.
it doesn't work out that well. But for the most part, at least they can always come to me to do all the handiwork stuff. So that helps a lot at the end of the day. So I
Yeah.
might be a yeah, I might be a dick when it comes to talking to them about stuff because I'm like, so what? But I actually always fix the problems that they have at home. So
Uh-huh. So what kind of build, like, so you guys are just, you handle the HVAC? Is that right?
yeah, we handle the
HVAC
HVAC right
systems?
now. So right now it's a HVAC. It's I work for a HVAC company, and we handle a lot of new construction. I'm not in the tenant fit out, which is like when you're doing like a build out of tenant spaces in existing buildings. We handle more
Hmm.
new construction. So the project we're doing, except
Okay.
for this one project we're doing, where we're doing a hotel rehab. It's a landmark rehab in Midtown.
Hmm.
So we've done quite a few famous ones like the Hard Rock and the Ritz Carlton, which we just completed.
Oh, wow.
So it's really interesting, and that's what's also really interesting. It's like you would think doing so many buildings, the architects, the engineers were like, oh, yeah, you know the problems, and you know how to handle it. It's like every single building is like new and like new problems arises. I'm like, it's the same problem. You never fixed it, and just like
Hmm.
they give you the templates that are broken so they can charge you so much money. And it's the stupidest thing because in the on the bidding table when we actually go, we're like we actually because they sometimes they tell you, hey, can you value engineer, how can we save money? We're like, you can save a lot of money, you take this and that, but guess what, this won't work. So at the end of the day, you're going to want it to work, but you want to save money up front to show the owners and the owner's rep and the bank. At the end of the day, you're going to have it in a change order, but a lot more money because it's not going to be cheaper when it was 3 years ago. It's going to be 3 years with escalation as a change
Hmm.
order. And then we're going to have to fight for it. We're going to fight for more money because, it's like we didn't have to do it. It's a change order. So it's just that, and
Right.
every single time, every single job is like the same thing. And we're always like, why didn't you include it in the beginning? We could have gotten a bargain because, we hadn't gotten the job yet. You could have dangled in our face and, hey, do this too, and then take it out later on. Almost never the case. And that's so sad. It's like, who the hell is bidding this shit out? You wonder. Like, are they that competent? Like, these GCs should know better. These engineers and architects should know better. But I guess they're really, at the end of the day, playing the owners and their money, because they're like, oh, business developers, they have so much money. And they do. But that's how everything costs so much. Why, a 500 square foot apartment is like $500,000. Like, ridiculous.
Hmm.
It's just the
The
cost of building it.
um why, I guess, why is it that construction is organized in a way, and this might be a really basic, this might be it's almost a silly question, but like, since there seems to be so many different layers to construction, why wouldn't there just be one company that just had all the architects and the contractors and the subcontractors like all together? Is it just because you wouldn't have enough work to keep them all
That's
busy,
actually
so that's why it's
no.
divided up?
It's the thing is that I've seen actually companies try to organize, like do a sort of an open interface where you can pre-qual and be part of the bidding process and do sort of like a streamlined process. But the problem is that there is actually a lot of competition. There are a lot of subcontractors out there. There are also a lot of GCs, general contractors out there too as well. There's a lot of competition. There's actually not enough work for those contractors and subcontractors. So what ends up
Yeah.
happening is that they become desperate for work. So when they become desperate for work, they take work for costs or a little below cost, and they realize that sometimes you can't take it for below cost because then you go out of business. And then those contractors fail, some contractors fail, and then somebody has to come in and fix the failures. But there's also a lot of companies that, oh, I did this and I can open my own company. I have so many people that we hired and then we fired and then they opened their own company. And like, oh, now I have my own company, not knowing, you have to get insurance, the proper insurance. You have to get the proper people. You have to do your accounting correctly. You have to pre-qual. There's like a lot of little nuances, but everyone thinks they want their owner. Everyone wants to be a president and CEO of like shit company. And but like I said, CEO of zero is zero. So you could be CEO of one, and that's you, and make yourself feel good and give yourself a fucking title, but you're still shit.
Mhm.
So that's the where it's like it's difficult to kind of weed out some of the junk for like people who are coming into the New York market, the new GCs and stuff like that are trying to vie for new business. And they're like, okay, there's like a handful of people that we know are reliable. But then that's the catch 22. You want to give it to the reliable people, but at a certain point, you can't give it to them anymore because they are overwhelmed with work. So, like, let's say I have 100 people right now working for me, right? I think at most we can grow right now with the current management staff will be like 200 people and we'll be okay. If we do 300, then we'll start fucking up like crazy until we actually hire competent help. But again, competent help is extremely hard to find. And then it's not just competent management, it's competent field laborers too. And we have to make sure all the field laborers are properly vetted out, have safety, paperwork and whatnot, and also have paperwork to begin with. Because this is New York, who knows what paperwork they have? That's another issue. So there's a lot of little things that make a company can make a break a company, and a lot of people don't realize that. They're just like, oh, let me go out and do set up a LLC because it takes 2 minutes online on LegalZoom to create LLC, and then like okay, try to get business and realize what you need is connections. You have to have connections. Like I would never like even though I kind of know how to run the company in so many different areas, I have zero sales skills. I would never be able to sell a job. I would never be able to get a job on my own. I don't have
Mhm.
the connections. I don't have the friends, and I don't want the liability. So it's like I would never want to do it for myself. I just want my salary and just be happy getting what I get paid. That's it. But a
Yeah.
lot of people but it's good. It's good because entrepreneurship and stuff like that is it's great. But also know yourself. If you can't handle it, hire somebody to do it. People want to do them things themselves, but everything themselves, and that's how they screw themselves over. Like we had this company that was trying to. My boss was trying to branch out into electrical, and he's like, "Oh, when I try and buy into this other company, and I looked at the financials, I'm like, you got nothing. You didn't even
Mhm.
hire a like accounting manager to handle your books, your payroll, your union, your receivables, your payables, and you want someone to invest in your company? Like you don't even have personal wealth to actually collateralize against. Like who the fuck would invest in you? That's what's some crazy. That's what's so fucking crazy. It's like build out your own personal wealth. That's for me. That's my biggest thing. I try to build up my own personal wealth, you know, as a backup because
Mhm.
I already should quit my job like 3 times already because it's like I don't like the bullshit. Sometimes if you're gonna play games and I like to cut to the crap. So I got pissed off one time when he tried to throw me on the bus, and I'm like, well, fuck you too then. I'm gonna leave. So I left, but I always know I have backup. So my rent is my backup. So I
Mhm.
have properties that this is how I learned actually how to fix things and do things myself because otherwise, if you pay everyone to do everything, you won't get much at the end of the day. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so
So what kind of like what's like the biggest kind of building that you've worked on?
So the biggest building we worked on so far is the really tall one down by South Street Seaport. Do you know
Mhm.
what that one Manhattan Square? It's about 1.2 million square feet.
Oh
It's
wow.
80 stories. It's like luxury condos. It's very weird. It's odd. It's like almost looks like a penis sticking out in the back in the bottom of the seaport area because that's the tallest building right now.
Ah.
They're gonna build so many tall buildings adjacent to it, but right now it's the tallest building downtown. That's condos. That's
Uh-huh.
condos.
Wow.
Not of course World Trade Centers. That's commercial and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
condo. And that was just a really nice building, but it's such a weird location because you have a lot of projects around it. We have a lot of like still a lot of construction, and it's the highway right is right there. But it's a very strange neighborhood, but very nice building. I would say it came out pretty well.
Hmm.
Um, but what's funny is that it's a build. It's one of those buildings that's R2 421A, where you'll have a luxury building, and right next door is affordable housing. So the affordable
Oh.
housing is a little thing on the side. It's like,
Uh-huh.
right. That's the I guess that's to get the tax abatement.
Yeah. So, how did the how is has the did the I guess the pandemic and kind of the shift to more work from home impacted you, if it has at all?
So
And
what we noticed that when the pandemic hit, it did freeze our jobs for a little bit, but like for a month or two. So it's not too long. It did affect, of course, all the inventory issues and stuff like that, and supply chain. That was a major, major, major hit on us. And the cost for because we do our own fabrication, sheet metal went up, skyrocketed through the roof. It went up in 6 months. It went up double. In a year, it went up triple, and then 2 years, it's like more than 6 times the original cost. So it's insane.
wow.
Yeah, sheet metal is insane, and there's no reason right now it should be this high, but it's just because they can keep it this high. People are still
Mm,
paying the prices. It's like just like it's typical inflation. There's no reason why it should be these prices. We don't really have too much of like a supply chain issue anymore. But they're like, if people are paying the prices, why not gouge them?
mm,
And that's the issue of the industry. We also noticed that when we were doing new condos, we started veering towards like hotel slash mixed commercial. So it's like condos with hotels. So the Waldorf is one. We're doing one Rock Center Hotel. So it's like it seems to be more veering on the side of hotels and stuff like that we're doing right now, instead
mm,
of just pure condominiums and whatnot. Condominiums are taking a slow uh, jolts to because I guess I'm assuming higher interest rates. You know, there's a glut of inventory that hasn't been released too as well. They're like
mm,
biding the time. So you can see developers kind of trying to like renegotiate with the banks and whatnot. What they're going to do with the property they bought. So a lot of things happened. This mixed use, interesting. I think we see like also a lot of retire like sort of like I wouldn't say it was like a community center, but sort of retirement, aging centers and stuff like that. We're looking at those bids, but we don't like doing those because those are a little outside the city areas and stuff like that. But we're seeing a lot of bids for um, that are outside in the Westchester area, New Jersey. But again, it's so hard to find good help, that we just kind of like no, we deny it. We really reject a lot of those jobs that are outside the city area. It literally is so hard to find help that actually they can drive to work as well, because they're
mm.
not anywhere close to public transportation.
Right.
Yeah, so.
I had an earlier podcast with a friend who owns an auto repair shop, and he had said it's really hard for them to find good help to fix cars.
Mhm.
And he was, I guess he shared a thought which it just seemed to, I don't know if it made sense, but it kind of was an interesting background to what you hear when you're saying like it's hard to find good help, because it seems that like in high school these days it's basically it's just college or bust. Like there is no like kind of
There's
um
no trade school anymore.
pride. There's no pride or celebration if you don't go to college. It's almost just like you have to go, and if you don't, then you're a failure, and that's the default, is doing something else. So it seems that everybody's pushed in one direction, and it's not really appreciated or celebrated for the people who don't go to college.
Yeah, no, I
um
totally
do you think that
agree.
that's
That's a major that's especially in our industry when it's construction. You can actually make a lot more money than doctors and lawyers as like a project manager or construction foreman, because we've had construction foremen that made 250 to 300,000, and that at the going rate for a lawyer or a doctor in the city, that's an average.
yeah.
That's what they're getting paid. So the problem is that it's not advertised, because all you see is like, oh, construction workers, they must be making $15 an hour.
Right.
oh, blah blah blah, this and that. It's blue collar. It's beneath me. And what's so strange is that it's like there is so much available work for the people who don't want to go to school and study stupid English or psychology or crap that do nothing with it and end up being a
Yeah.
barista. It's
Right.
just like, but what's being sold is that you must get a 4 year college degree to amount to anything, and it's
Right.
sad because a 4 year degree is $100,000 of debt most likely, and you learn shit. You literally learn shit. Like my nieces and stuff like that. I would quiz them as a joke when they. One of my cousins sent my niece over here to go to school, and I put her in community college. I said, "You want to learn and you want to be around real people who actually have to fucking work for a living and also go to school. Community college is the best because you get a really good understanding of how fucking hard it is to actually live and work at the same time. And these people are people who actually want to go to school, not like someone who's living off their fucking mothers or daddy's fucking pockets and shit like that. So she realized, like, because you have mothers, single moms, you have people who are like in their 30s going back to school trying to get the degree, but that's to to enrich themselves because they're trying to do something in the field that they are, not people who are just getting a degree, not knowing what the hell to do, and just partying for 4 fucking years. It's just, but they don't get any recognition for the trade school is considered like garbage these days. It's considered like I went to Brooklyn Tech, and one of the requirements for our the graduation was to actually do either metal shop or wood shop, and I thought that was fucking fantastic. I love working with my hands, and
Yeah.
it's I thought it was much better than freaking calculus, but anyway, I still took calculus, but it's
Yeah.
more useful. And that's the thing. It's like there are so many more useful classes. They don't have home ec anymore. It's like
Yeah.
people don't know how to cook. It's like people don't know how to fucking cook, and people don't know how to do the most simplest task. And the saddest part is like they should train you. They should fucking train you. You're paying this much money. If they don't train you in like college, at least train you in high school. But they took it all out in high school. They give you a bunch of stupid classes you have to take, and now they don't even train you in college. You're learning remedial fucking English in Harvard still. It's like it's sad because they know like you didn't learn shit in high school except for how to fucking pass a test to get into Harvard.
Yeah.
So it's and most of our generation will really benefit from fucking learning a trade instead of going to school, incurring a shit ton of debt, and not knowing what the fuck to do with their life. It's the saddest part. It's like they do not know what to do with their life, and they're always trying to fucking find themselves. Like, find yourself and fucking work a real job, You can find yourself later, but work a real trade. It's just so stupid. It's like everyone that I talked to, like, oh, like I was trying to hire this girl who she seemed like she was pretty decent in her early 20s, right? And then she's like, I want to get into the construction industry because I took my degree was in engineering. I said, oh, that's great. Work in construction because then you can figure out if you want to do mechanical engineering or something else. But in my company, we allow like a lot of flexibility. So you can start off as an admin and then become a project manager. You don't really need to go to school. I think you can try that route, instead of going back to school. And then she declined the offer because she wanted to go back to school. I'm like, what the fuck are you going to learn? They're going to give you the most basic shit. All the engineers that we deal with, like they're like just graduating from school and they make the same fucking mistakes, have no idea what they're doing and reading off a fucking book and don't know how to install a fucking piece of pipe. And that's the problem. It's like you don't know like how to apply what you learn to real life situation and you don't know how to talk to people. So they're like it's like this idiotic like really really situation where you put so much effort in schooling but the school sucks and the school doesn't get account that school has no culpability for the shit that they push out. Like
Right.
literally if you're pushing out shit you should get actually you shouldn't have the fucking you know what is it the nonprofit status anymore. You should get that fucking revoked for number one. Two, you should be penalized because remember when they had those technical schools that were like supposed universities but weren't universities and they had to get their license revoked? Revoke the fucking license for these private universities that are churning out garbage graduates. There's no accountability. So
Yeah.
this is so much
No,
crap.
And I think there's, I mean, to me it seems, and I guess I've thought about this as I've tried to, I don't know, try to maybe get out of the bubble that I live in, but is to realize that like for a lot of people, working behind a desk is not the best choice, and that's what college pushes you towards. So like to
Yeah,
your point, like maybe you very well might find a lot more fulfillment in your job if you're getting your hands involved in what you're doing. Not everybody is meant to sit in front of a computer. Maybe most of us aren't.
exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, and also it's kind of like even if you don't, actually, you know what I do like. My friend, she actually works for Con Ed right now. But what was really interesting about her Con Ed program was that they picked a bunch of NYU graduates and from other schools, but for some reason that they love NYU graduates because it's so close to their headquarters. But what was great about the program, which I thought was really interesting, is that they would put you in like a 2 year program and you did everything. So you did like 6 months, it's like a rotation program. So you did 6 months of accounting. You did 6 months of sitting with the field guys, learning how they put up the electric lines and stuff like that. And then another 6 months of doing service. And then until you realize what you're good at or what you want to be, they did continue 6 months. So 4 different rotations. I'm like, that's what college should be about, actually. Do rotations on different areas instead of just teaching you all theoretical shit.
Yeah.
And you can't really
Or
put together a presentation.
or maybe, the other idea is like after you come out of high school is to give yourself a couple of years to work in
Yeah,
something
that's
to
true.
kind of
I
figure out
mean,
what you like to do.
the work program would have been ideal because like at certain schools they have it where you do an internship in what you're interested in, and you get paid for it too. So it's going to help you, and it's also going to like enlighten you to like, okay, how to budget yourself, because you're actually getting paid to do what you're supposed to, what you're going to eventually hopefully graduate and want to have your career in. But they stop a lot of those internships, and now it's just internships like the way they make you get coffee and stupid shit, and it's like you do nothing except for be somebody little bitch for like 6 months. And that's just like sad, because the internship is for you to learn and want to like, okay, maybe focus on this when you graduate, versus like, okay, now you get a free cheap labor, that's it.
Yeah.
So I think at one point they were penalized, like JP Morgan and Goldman was being penalized, but that was a different. They were being that's a different, because they were actually not paying people and making them do real work. So that's a different story. But
Yeah.
that's what they should do. If you're going to actually graduate with a degree in economics or a degree in, actually they should eliminate some of the degrees. One, there's too many stupid degrees out there that mean nothing, really mean
Mm.
nothing. It's like so dumb. I don't know, really, like English degree is great for teaching maybe, but focus on teaching then. What's the English major for? I don't really get that. Like, what
Well, I
the
was a
fuck is
history
it?
major, so
It's like I don't get that. I mean, unless you're gonna be focused on that in your career later on, or you might have wanted to, if you want to be a teacher. I just don't get some of these majors. Like, you can combine them. Can't you combine a lot of these majors together to be like more sort of like a liberal arts thing, as like a one, instead of just having too many like specific major that is kind of almost useless?
I think
You know,
to
unless you're gonna
I would
actually
I
put a
guess I would
base.
say for me, like I think really history is also about like being able to understand and kind of like get a story. And I think
Mhm.
while that sounds like kind of very like foo-foo or whatever, like a lot of like business, a lot of marketing, a lot of advertising, a lot of like selling is based on what the story is. So I think because I'm in the same business as John, in wine, and it's very useful to be able to know how to construct a story from scratch as opposed to just kind of being fed a story, and also to be able to kind of break down a story, and whether it might be history, but it could also be, if I'm just meeting you, being able to aggressively analyze what somebody's saying about what their business is like or what their life is like, helps you kind of judge whether or not you think they're telling the truth and how much you can do. So I guess that's what I'd say. That's where I would find that skill applicable, but it's certainly not as directly applicable as other things. I think more generally, I think just the idea of encouraging kids. I think the biggest thing is we shouldn't be discouraging kids from doing things that are not college related. I think that would be the biggest takeaway. Is you should realize there is a huge array of jobs out there, and while college is a good option for many people, it's also not a necessary option for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's the thing is like that I hated about college is that you're required to take all these prerequisites to actually to focus on your major. But then you could have actually taken stuff that would help you as an overall person. Like history and English and general like and public speaking were great classes. I love them. But they could have refined it a little bit better because they made me take two or three classes over. And I felt like it was just to fluff it up a little bit so they can
Mm-hmm.
make extra money. But you didn't have to take so many different concentrations for like to get before you actually were immersed in your specialty much later. It should have been introduced to it early on, so then you know if you want to continue it or not. The
Mm-hmm.
problem is the way it's layered. Like it's almost like our elementary and high school, it's like it's constant half the years to repeat what we just learned. And that's what I felt like college was too, but more expensive. It's like you're
Mm-hmm.
repeating stuff that you just learned. You learned it in high school and you're repeating it so they can grade you on again and make more money off of you. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I found was really stupid. I like again, I have nothing against English majors or any philosophy majors and stuff like that, but I think it could have been well more like it could have been it could be done a lot better so that you're not completely incompetent when you graduate with like a degree in philosophy that you have no idea how to manage your money. There
Mm-hmm.
should be classes, required classes, like
Yeah.
real classes to actually take you out into the real world. And that doesn't
Yeah.
have to be your major, but it should be part of being an adult. Like one class I actually thought was interesting was how to actually prepare yourself for business dinners and have etiquette classes. I thought that
Yeah.
was great. That was actually given as the first class in our business school to actually learn how to speak in a business environment, do a lot of presentations, also learn how to eat at a dinner, how to eat properly at a dinner, and also how to put together a basic resume. And you see that there's so many colleges that they don't even like teach you in the classes and stuff like that how to put together a package to sell yourself. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what you have to do. You're always going to have to sell yourself.
Yeah.
So you're not teaching them how to do that. It's like, guess what? You're not going to have evolved adults. You're going to have someone that's going to be constantly reliant on somebody or another to grow.
Yeah.
And it's going to have the growing. It's going to be a longer growing phase, and it's going to be more of a clutch on somebody else. And unfortunately, it ends up being like their parents or something like that. Because once they graduate, like where the fuck are they gonna go?
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this as a tried and true New York City girl. But like, what are some of the things that you would recommend for somebody to do in New York City if they wanted to see not the touristy New York, but like the real New York?
So it's so funny. I was watching something. I was watching something on TikTok, and this guy who's going around. He's like, when I go to a different country, I ask the native, what should I do? Because the natives, should know because they live there. But the native said to him, "Don't ask me. I go to my fucking job, and then I go home, and then maybe I go to my local joint." Because I live here, so I'm not gonna go really explore as much. Go follow the Asians because they spend a lot of money and a lot of time, and they have limited amount of time coming here, so they'll pick the best places to go.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination of that. So you have to kind of like filter the crap out because there's a lot of TikTok videos of where did this go, where did it, you have to try this place, and then there's a whole bunch of different places because we're like a food mecca. My thing is like the best thing of how you can experience New York is to eat through New York, like literally just eat through New York.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, Queens is one of my favorite places to go eat because you have the ethnic diversity nowhere else that you can get nowhere else, and it's actually freaking good and super cheap. Like I love going through Flushing, Jackson Heights, and stuff like that. And then like everyone's like, "Oh, I like the people." The people kind of suck. Yeah, yes and no. The people is great. Like New Yorkers, I think have the one thing that's like that I find really like nostalgic when I leave because they're a little bit more real. It's like they're assholes, but they'll help you. It's kind of like me. I can be an asshole, but I'll still help you. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll curse you out while I'm helping you out, but that's the whole point. So you can learn to do it yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I find like New York. Like if I'm parking and I'm trying to parallel park, I'm like move the fucking over. You have this much space, and I'm like, everyone's trying to help you. Everyone's cursing you out too and laughing at the same time. Yeah, that's the tip. So for me, it's like eat your way through New York, and that's how you realize like how great the city is because food is, it's, you know, it's life, and also it's enjoyment. Like, I love to eat, and that's why when when somebody's always like, "Oh, what do you do here?" I'm like, I literally just fucking go out to eat. I find new places. I'll just venture out, and not every place is gonna have like amazing food, but they might have an amazing dish. So sometimes it takes a few tries to come, you know, at a different restaurant, and also it's great if you meet like people that you can try different foods with, because the bigger the group, the more dishes you can order and try a
Hmm.
little bit of this. You can find out which dish is their specialty. So that's my biggest thing. Is like, love the city, but love the food more.
Yeah. Are there
Yeah.
any cuisines that you have never had a chance to try in New York but wish you could? Or have you seen everything in
No, I've
Europe?
eaten everything. I love to travel too, so I've eaten everything. I've eaten bugs and rats and, you know, and birds and pigeons. I'm like, I eat everything. Like, if it's edible, I'll eat it, because at least I'll try it once, see if I like it.
Yeah.
So, and I don't really care. I'm like, that's the thing. I was like, I'll eat everything. Because you never know, you might like it. That's why it's like, how can you say you didn't like it until you try it?
Yeah.
Even if it smells bad. Like, you know, I everyone's like, oh, durian. I'm like, it tastes like butter. It smells like shit. It's okay, as you can tolerate it, you know. So it's
I
just one
thought
of those.
durian tasted like sweaty mango.
No, it was, for some people it tastes really creamy, almost like a rich buttery, almost kind of like, what did you say? Not like, it has like a avocado like texture to it.
Mm,
But
yeah.
it smells like rotten feet, you know, like, or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
if you can get over that, it actually tastes really good. But only in small doses for me, because it's a little bit too much. It's too rich.
Yeah.
Um, but there's like a whole bunch of food that smell bad. Like, my partner always makes fun of me because my mom has this dish that she makes, and it's like, it's just pure boiled, you know, pig. It's like a pork belly, but there's
Uh-huh.
no flavoring on it. You have to dip it into like this like really rotten stench of like anchovy sauce. Sometimes it
Yeah.
grow maggots and stuff like that, but I'm like, it tastes really freaking good. It tastes really good. It's a good dipping sauce. That's why I was like, I can eat anything as long as it doesn't kill me. And sometimes it makes me sick, but you get over it. At least I get to leave before I eat again.
Well, I love the way you refer to like eating your way through New York, because I think that's the other part of it is I think it also really lets you connect with the people at the table, and it even and the people that are at the restaurant. Like if you come and you're learning about it, you're learning about people and you're learning about a culture.
Exactly. And the thing is that and that's where you meet, and that's how you actually, for me, that's how I can tell if someone is actually a good person or not. It's like how they treat the staff, how they treat the wait staff, because it's like dating New York is kind of like a shit show. But if you have someone that's like, oh, going to treat someone that is working like a shit job like really nicely, that, you know, how they like, because I've seen people, my sister could be an asshole about it. She'll be like, you know, give me some water, give me some water. I'm like, bitch, this shit is $5. Get your own fucking water, you know, calm down. They're not going to have the best service because they're trying to churn and burn, you know? They just
Yeah.
going through the motion. Don't expect bad service. I mean, don't expect good service. Expect a little bad service, but be kind about it, because they're not making much money.
Yeah.
And if you see people who treat people like that poorly, then you know they're they're not good people. So that's how I
Yeah.
can tell too as well. So that's why I always try to curb my sister's bad habits of like trying to get good service out of a Chinese joint and stuff like that. It's not gonna happen.
That's very interesting. I never really even thought about that. Yeah, but that's true. You can see it's unguarded. You get to see
Yeah.
people in an unguarded
Yeah,
moment.
exactly. That's why it's like, it's more, you show sympathy. Like, people, for me, I tip reasonably, but I always tip really well for diners, because that's also the cheapest,
Uh-huh.
and Chinese restaurants, cheap Chinese and Vietnamese restaurants, you know, like the cheap joints,
Yeah.
because they don't make that much money. You know, they're 15% off of like $5 or $10 their dish and stuff. It's nothing. They're splitting with a bunch of people too as well. So
Mhm.
same thing with like breakfast places. You know, $7. Like, you know, I'm not talking about the avocado toast that's $20. I'm talking about like the real breakfast diners and stuff like that. That like they have to constantly refill your coffee, but they're not getting the markup on it because it's only one cost.
Right.
So that's how you know, like, if this is a good person, this is someone that's paying attention to the pains of other someone that has to work this job for like 20 years, you know. And because
Interest.
those people work there for like 20, 30 years, they can't really change their jobs, because I see the same people too as well, over and
Yeah.
over if I go there.
It's interesting because even as you talk about food, like one of the things we try to do with our kids, I've got three kids, a 17-year-old, 13-year-old, and 11-year-old, is, and I don't necessarily want them to be foodies, but I want them to be able to go out and, if confronted with a dish they're not familiar with, to at least be able to get through that experience without just kind of like knee jerk being grossed out, because you're going to face new things and they may even be a little bit off putting. But I think you want them to be able to kind of muster up the curiosity and enough respect to be able to just try it. And I don't think anybody expects people to necessarily like everything, but I think you
Exactly.
want people at least to have enough respect for the people they're with to try it and not make a spectacle of themselves being grossed out by it.
Yeah, exactly. Because for especially Asians, it's the one thing they always do is they always try to feed you, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's not the best food, but that's the best they can offer. And
Yeah.
sometimes, like, because that's the best they can offer, it's a lot. It's a lot for them to make. It's a lot of budget out of their household budget for them to even feed you. So the
Mhm.
least you can do is eat it, and you don't have to enjoy it, but just eat it. Because if you don't, and you're like, oh no, it's unless you have dietary, it's allergy restriction, that's different. But if you're going to be picky about it, it just shows that your level of respect, your level of awareness is kind of like is zero. It's just like
Yeah.
you need to grow up a little bit because you're going to encounter these moments so often, and people are going to look at you differently, and you're not going to realize that until much later, until they just start discounting you out of their lives because you just don't have enough respect to, sit at the dinner table.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you have any favorite restaurants that you would suggest for selfishly I should find out? Like any either good, I mean, either Vietnamese restaurants or just anything in general,
So, but the
Manhattan or
sad
Queens?
part, well, the sad part about it is that in New York City, there's almost zero Vietnamese, like good Vietnamese restaurants.
Yeah.
It's like it's crap. You want good Vietnamese restaurant, you have to go to Philly.
Ah,
It's
really?
close. Yeah, I'm telling you, because the Vietnamese restaurants in New York are predominantly Chinese owned with they're Vietnamese speakers, but they're like ethnic Chinese. So
Okay.
they might be somewhat good, but they try to do too much, like a
Mm,
typical Chinese restaurant. So they specialize in nothing, and they taste it tastes like so it tastes
mm,
like regular, like Americanized Vietnamese food. And for me,
mm,
Americanized Vietnamese food is just not Vietnamese food.
mm,
It's like all these like fancy Madame Vo and Hanoi House and all that. It's all crap because when you go in there, it's like, oh, they put bone marrow, which that's cheap shit, and they charge you $20 for it, and they add this and that on it, and I'm like, okay, and then they douse the shit out of it and make it super sweet, and I'm like, that's not Vietnamese food. Vietnamese food has like it's fragrant, it's spicy, and it's not always sweet. But the problem is that they cater too much to, I guess, American diets. So it's
mm,
like overwhelmingly too sweet, overwhelmingly like too much, where they put too many little things in it. And I'm like,
yeah.
just a simple soup, just simple like banh mi or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
they don't really do that well here. So unfortunately, there's not too many places. There are better places. I think you can get decent food. Maybe. Well, actually, I have it. I just went a month ago, and it actually had a really good banh mi, which is the Vietnamese sandwich,
Yeah.
on so in Vidtown in Brooklyn. So it's like Vidtown. It's like Avenue. What is it? Sunset. It's like Sunset Park, Industrial Sunset Park. So
Uh
in
huh.
16th and Avenue, 8th Avenue.
Uh huh.
And it's
Okay.
like a little like it's a little joint that, well, I think because of the pandemic they only do like takeout right now. They used to have a couple of tables, like two tables in there,
Mm,
but now they only do takeout, and they sell really good banh mi because they have the crispiness of the bread. Like
yeah.
a really good baguette is like slightly crispy on the outside and really soft in
Yep.
the inside, so it doesn't cut your tongue and cut
Yeah.
your weak
Yeah.
upper mouth.
Yes.
And it's either you get the Italian bread, it's all soggy, or you get really really crusty bread. It's like really hard in your mouth. So that's why it's not really done too well here. In
Yeah.
Chinatown, that's like decent, but again,
Mm,
nothing like, oh my god, amazing. Because I
yeah.
when I took John to Vietnam, he's like, wow, it's like night and day. I told you, I said, because he doesn't really like Vietnamese food that much.
Yeah.
Same thing with Thai food here. It's overwhelmingly sweet. So when we went to Vietnam, he's like, wow, it is so different, and it's like really really different. The
Yeah.
flavors are really really different. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, not so much here. So we go to the typical. Like we like because he cooks a lot. And, he's a former chef. So he cooks at home. So when we go out to eat, we go to places that it's a pain in the ass to do. So Chinese is very pain in the ass because you need a lot of ingredients, a lot
Hmm.
of time, and they're so fast and so easy to do it. Um, or we go to Japanese. Japanese is
Hmm.
our favorite. So
Okay.
sushi is a pain in the ass. So sushi, we love, we love, we love, we love sushi.
Hmm.
So that's the thing.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll like to go on record. John is a super good guy. I'm so glad I met him way
Mm,
back in the day when I was still a lawyer looking to get into the wine world and stumbled upon him doing an in-store tasting downtown. So I'm
that's cool.
he's a good guy. You got a gem there.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I think you're coming over tomorrow. I keep encouraging whenever his friends come over. I was like, please take as much wine as you can because we don't have we don't have enough storage.
You guys have you have a very extensive collection.
Oh, he can't drink right now, so I'm like,
Yeah.
please take as much as you can. So
I'm happy to help.
okay.
So before we wrap up, can I ask like what gives you hope at the end of the day?
I think at the end of the day, what really gives me hope is it's my mom. It's like the fact is that she raised six females, six girls, and she's so lively. She's 4'6", 4'7". She's like 85 pounds, and she like carries 50 pounds of rice. Like, 'cause she'll go to Costco. She won't wait for me. And she'll go to Costco and Aldi and carry all that stuff on a bus for herself. She still cooks for like my sisters. She'll like drop off food for lunch for me every day because I go to work in Staten Island. So
Mm,
she'll come over, drop off lunch for me because she knows I hate Staten Island food. Um, she's like, she gives me hope. She's like amazing woman. It's like, this is the kind of person that like you want to emulate. And she's like they don't make them like that anymore. So
yeah, that's lovely. Sounds like a real special person. Well,
she is.
yeah. Well, thank you for getting together and sharing all this. I really enjoyed the chance to chat with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you to all the listeners and viewers out there. May you go out and explore our country with curiosity, respect, compassion, and humility. All right. Thanks so much, Tammy. I'll see you tomorrow. All
Yeah.
right. Take care.